Today we are in mid-December 2023, and it is the perfect time to talk 10 of my favorite neighborhood options in the Tampa Bay, Florida area for 2024. We're going to hit the Tampa, Hillsborough County side, and I have some hand-picked items for you there I really like. We're going to talk some new construction options if you're into that. And we're going to finish the video with the St. Petersburg coastal side of Tampa Bay to round it all out. So I hope this provides you a ton of value and to tell you a little bit about each one, even some pricing information to boot. So we're going to do all of that. If you haven't already grabbed my Tampa Florida Relocation Guide, it's completely updated for 2024, completely free download. Make sure you get your hands on that. We not only have my favorite neighborhoods, but we have my favorite new construction specifically for families, for all that. We have favorite things to do, places to eat, health and wellness. So just a little bit more of a comprehensive consumable guide. So that is in the description box below. So get your hands on that. And without further ado, let's hop into today's video. Okay, number one on my list, we're starting on the Tampa side and we're going to kick it off with a bang, and we're going with historic Hyde Park. So this one to me is probably the best mousetrap in the conversation when it comes to, say you're someone that needs a lot of the things the suburbs provide. You need, kind of safe neighborhood feel of housing. You need good schools. You want to be maybe close to shops, etc. But you want to be in the city. You want to be by all the stuff that Tampa has to offer, where the suburbs typically are on the fringes. Well, historic Hyde Park just kind of wins out in the conversation of all the options in that realm. It is beautiful bungalow, kind of southern living, but it's really mature in the fact that most of these streets have already been restored and renewed. There's urban infill mixed new construction in it. And it was kind of one of the first ones to gentrify out of all of them. Beyond that, right in your own district, you have historic Hyde Park Village, which is a 6-block mixed use of dining and shopping and boutiques and restaurants. It's beautiful. It's walkable. Really nice feeling. It surrounds all these homes. And then the rest of Tampa, right? You're less than 5 miles to downtown Tampa, Ybor City, International Plaza, and Bay Plaza and Bay Street and all that has to offer. You're 6 miles one way to the airport. And then you have one of the highest rated high schools in the entire area and all that kind of stuff. So it's a fantastic option if you want a family safe area, but you don't want to be all the way in the suburbs. The last 6 months, historic Hyde Park, just to finish this section, 59 properties sold at a median of about $799,000, just to give you some food for thought. Okay, number 2 on my list is an area called Palma West. So take everything I just said about historic Hyde Park, all those value propositions, still in play here. You're just going to add a slight bit difference in mileage and exclusivity. So Palma West, you go 2.5 miles to the west of historic Hyde Park, and you're just going to be a little bit more private. Still beautiful mix of homes. You have a wonderful private golf and country club right there. Great schools, great amenities. You're still in that same proximity, right? Because you went west and all the things are north and west and northeast of the area. But only 10 homes turned over in total in the last 6 months in this area. It's very private, and it's going to feel a little bit more like a neighborhood than like a borough. And that would be a slight difference between historic Hyde Park. So a little bit of it is price difference and a little bit of it is stylistic difference. But in the last 6 months, those 10 properties that turned over, albeit small sample size, turned over at a 1.5 million median price. So you got to take the juxtaposition there. But Palma West, I think in that same conversation, is another interesting offering. Okay, and the third one on my list, we're just going to keep kicking it further west, and we're going to talk about an area called Beach Park. So this area we'll show here in Tampa, in South Tampa, is kind of like it's shaped down, kind of like a spoon. So it just hooks straight into the water. And on this side of the water, now it's all bay water, the Gulf's further, but this side of the water, you have Hillsborough Bay and you have Old Tampa Bay. So historic Hyde Park sits right on Hillsborough Bay. Palma West sits in the middle of the two, now 2 miles each way. But on this side of the water in Old Tampa Bay, you set Beach Park. So it's just like a straight line. Well, Beach Park gives you, again, you got all that same proximity, right? So these are 3 options in the idea of moving to the South Tampa area. But what Beach Park gives you is the home difference, I think, is pretty substantial. This feels like old Florida. They're beautiful homes, but they're not as bungalow urban feeling. It feels like old Florida homes, and depending on how far you are down your street is how far you have access to the water. So the typical value, the closer you get to the water, obviously the higher the price point, but the home style is just different. It's a little bit more sprawling. You have mature landscaping, tons of trees. It's the best way to describe it. It just feels like a throwback in time a little bit, but in a fantastic part of Tampa Bay when it comes to proximity. The last 6 months, we had 50 properties, so a lot more turnover here. So between the 3, you have, 130 properties to work with, but 50 properties turned over at a median price of $1.7 million. But I would take that with a grain of salt because median would be a good marker for it. But the range is pretty vast with outliers laying in this area as well. But Beach Park, I think for number 3 could be another cool one to check it out. Okay, so for number 4 and 5, I'm going to give you 2 other offerings that really paint a picture from an education standpoint about how to look at the Hillsborough County area. So when you look at the main areas, like I just mentioned, every single one on the first 3, right, had a median price. It was pretty high up there, right? Historic Hyde Park, a medium at $800K. I would say that's probably even a little conservative from my experience. But the other way to live around the water and to live this kind of urban proximity lifestyle is to go north of these areas. So if you go north about 4 miles, then like most areas that get popular, then they have a second and a third and a fourth that start to gentrify around them because simply people need a place to go and they can't all push into one area. Well, the next area that hit popularity to South Tampa was an area called Riverside Heights, one of my absolute favorites. I bought a home in 2019 there and since sold it. But this area is the same kind of everything I just described here, but almost like a junior version of it. It has a mix of historic bungalows, of urban infill people knocked down, a mix of people that have lived there forever and just paid their taxes and are benefiting from all that. But the river district's where a lot of like the eclecticness and the cool stuff started popping out around Tampa. They built, they restored an old, I think it was like a where they repaired trains in Tampa, an old factory called Armature Works, and now it's a mixed-use, like big Boston-style food hall. They have an upscale restaurant like Eulalie, Sparkman Wharf down by Channelside, and that all runs along this river, and there's a bunch of neighborhoods that sit around it. Well, Riverside Heights is a really nice happy medium to not really lose all that proximity you need if you work in downtown Tampa or you need access to the airport or something like that. It gets 4 miles above it, but you can still shoot to South Tampa, Ybor, all the district lifestyle amenities, which makes Tampa fantastic. The best part about Tampa, one of the best parts, is that they have these separate sections of town that are their own thing. And they're really downtown and south and, around the mall areas and that kind of thing. This still sits in that conversation. 43 properties over the last 6 months turned over in Riverside Heights, a median cost of $900K. Again, grain of salt there. I wanted to give you the full picture, but my house I bought in 2019, obviously very different time than now, but was at $299,000. So there was a vast mix of homes in there. Not every single home is $1 million in there. So I would take a good look at that, but that's the area, that's the direction I would start exploring. If the southern Tampa, the heart of it, doesn't quite work for you and your family, creeping north is a good way to satiate that need. Okay, and the 5th one on this list, the halfway point, I'm going to finish our Tampa section so I can move on and give you some variety. But I'm going to finish with Old Seminole Heights. And this is, again, I'm trying to build a story here. This is the same idea, but it's even junior to Riverside Heights. So we're going to go even further north, and Old Seminole Heights is going to sit 8 miles from our number 1 on the list. So we did 3 in a row in South Tampa. Riverside Heights set about 3.9 miles above those. Go another 4 miles, and you have Old Seminole Heights. This is where you can do similar things, but have even a bigger cost savings. Because what you're doing in essence is you're getting further from what the minds of the people, the masses, deem the most important. If they could update an area, I'll move to an area first, right? You get a little further from the bay, right? Because the bay is south. And then now you're inland, so you get a little further. You get a little east to west away from the river a little bit, and you get just further from all the main districts. Not grossly further, but you do. There's traffic and all that kind of stuff. And you save money for doing so, right? The homes don't update as fast. You're going to have far more affordability, but you're going to have a far more mix of different price ranges. You're going to get a little closer to the zoo and the theme parks. And there's goods and bads to that, pros and cons to all of that. But that's how you navigate any big city, really, And Tampa, I think, starts to make a lot of sense if you start to move down this and you're like, why is it this cost versus this? It's all the same idea. Well, Old Seminole Heights is where a lot of the young people moved. It's very eclectic. You have breweries. The 220 properties sold in the last 6 months, a lot more turnover, a lot more to work with. And the median was only $402,000. So half of the 220 sold for under $402,000 in the last 6 months in one of the hottest real estate markets we've seen in a long time. So you can see what I mean there. But you're just 4 miles from all this stuff I described of being amazing, right? So Old Seminole Heights, I think, would be a great example of what this area has to offer right now. It's cool, and it's got a really unique style of it on its own. It feels a lot like St. Pete to me. It's very, very eclectic. So that would round out my top 5 for Hillsborough County, and let's hop and talk about some new construction. Okay, number 6 on the list, probably the opposite of everything I've said so far in the video, and we're going to talk the true suburbs, and we're going north. Tampa is unique in that, Tampa Bay is unique in that there's suburbs in a bunch of different directions because it's inland. So if you go west, you don't just hit the water like Sarasota and Naples, you're still in the city. So you could go west to West Chase, you can go east to Brandon, you can go southeast to Riverview, and you can go north. And if you had to pick one right now, north's probably the most exciting. It's the sexiest. That's where the land was at. They can build not only new homes and amenities, but they can build them in master plan fashion because they had a lot more space, controlled ownership of the land that let them do intentional things that weren't all in silos from each other. And Chapel Crossings is an exciting one right now because that's exactly what they did. And they did it in a unique way. So what you have here in essence, you have a master plan area with 4 different builders. MI Homes, you have David Weekley, you have Centex, which is owned by Pulte, and you have MI Homes, so the same major players. You have about 7 different neighborhoods they play in. You're going to be starting in a broad range of $300,000 to the 600 pluses, townhomes and single families, and variety. But what they do on top of that with master plan is they're not just random one-offs, right? They build them as private amenity communities in the gates of communal amenities. And the communal amenities you're going to have are clubhouse, fitness center, dog park, like a zero entry, a resort style pool, which is great with kids or whatever you want to do. And this one's unique in that the thing about Wesley Chapel is it was full on country. It's full on, even when I built in 2015, it was the country, you know, this was like the pass through land to get to like Lakeland, from Lakeland to Tampa. And, but a lot of the origin of the land was for those reasons, right? So not everybody was super apt to everybody coming in and developing it. Well, some master developers like to keep some character in that development, you know, mixed in there. And these guys wanted to really capture the particular area that Chapel Crossings is built within Wesley Chapel by not just doing a crystal water lagoon, but they did a lazy river around mature landscaping. So it's going to be cool in its own outright, a lot of affordability. And Wesley Chapel offers fantastic, it's true suburbs. So you're going to have a lot more control in the demographic, the reason people are moving there, the price of the homes, the schools that surround them. It's going to be a little easier, in my opinion, to find community because most people are moving there. It's like being a freshman in college all over again for a lot of folks. But it's very safe. It's very family friendly. There's a lot of churches. There's a lot of sporting events. In Lutz, you have brand new Tampa Premium Outlets, which is far more pleasant, in my opinion, than the Orlando Premium Outlets. You have the Wiregrass Mall, open outdoor mall, tons of stuff going on there. So it's an exciting area. It's about 25 miles one way from downtown Tampa, which does not take 25 minutes. So commutability, depending on your perspective, could be a little hairy. But by going that distance, you get things that you cannot get anywhere in St. Pete and anywhere in Tampa. So it's not, it's a choice. It's it's binary. But that's how to look at that. And Chapel Crossings is one of those communities that I think is hot right now. The Epperson area is another one, but this one I definitely put on my radar if it was just for education alone. Okay, I have one more I wanted to mention amongst the many new construction options, but that I really like, and I'll explain why, and it's called Esplanade at Wiregrass Ranch. So Wiregrass Ranch is another master plan concept. Like one family, I believe, owned the property. I forgot how many acres it is exactly, but they sold that property with strings attached. So what they want end-to-end lifestyle. So they wanted not only neighborhoods that orient every demographic from starter home and rental to upsized family move that's affordable, all the way to empty nester, etc. But they wanted the schools mixed in, they wanted the lifestyle mixed in, and they wanted to control the builders that went into it. Well, one of the builders that went into it was Taylor Morrison. And Taylor Morrison, talk about a lot on my bigger channel, the Florida Relocation Guide in the Sarasota area, but they build a couple different brands. And one of those brands is Esplanade, and they build other brands as well. But Esplanade is their amenity-rich brand. Some of the best floor plans mixed with amenities that at that price range that Florida or anywhere really has to offer. They do a fantastic job. What I have not seen from the Esplanade brand by Taylor Morrison ever is a 55 and up unit. And I was speaking to the folks there that the reason they did an active adult was because of those strings attached. In order to get this land, the land was attached to this needing to be an active adult. So they merged their brand into how that oriented. And I think that pairing is unbelievable. So just amenity-wise, I'll rattle these off. I have notes just to articulate, but then I'll talk a little bit more about why this community is even more special than that. You have resort-style pool and spa, and the way they landscape and the driving in these communities, it feels like paradise if you move from out of state. Can't harp on that enough. It's Mediterranean, palm trees, beautiful. Tennis, pickleball, and bocce ball, and pickleball is becoming in vogue. State-of-the-art fitness centers, and a lot of them have spas and saunas and all that. They have a toasted cafe, so actual food service. On-site lifestyle manager. There is gathering rooms, catering kitchen, like a lot of these. They do event calendar is always full. and even concierge services to boot. But one of the best things about the Esplanade brand beyond that is the floor plans and the juxtaposition against what else you could do in Southwest Florida. So at the 2,200 to 3,300, they have some of the best floor plans for what people are looking for in Florida that I've ever seen at the price range. Now, they build a Lazio and a Palazzo and a Beacon and a Far East, and some of these floor plans, the way they're laid out, the amount of bedrooms, the bathrooms, the outdoor patios, the way that 2,900 square foot sits on a 60-foot lot, and the width of the outdoor patio, they feel much, much bigger. And a lot of people I know are downsizing from like 5,000 square feet, and they live that true Florida lifestyle, the collapsible sliders, screened-in patio. They're just laid out fantastic, and not every builder does well at all those different floor plans. It would definitely be worth your while to check out, and everyone falls in love with them. But it's a great example if you're looking at multiple builders. And the biggest thing is a lot of people get this one on their radar because you will save hundreds of thousands of dollars if you buy this community in Tampa Bay versus the same exact home in Lakewood Ranch, Florida, in the Sarasota area or in Naples. This is incredibly cheap. The Lakewood Ranch of Tampa Bay is Wesley Chapel. It doesn't look the same, but it's exactly the same to the city, and it is not the same price. So if you're shopping around and you're not romantic about which city because you're living in the suburbs already and you want to be in Southwest Florida, then Esplanade at Wiregrass Ranch could be interesting for multiple facets. Okay, number 8 on the list, we're going to finish our last 3 all in the St. Pete Gulf coastal side of Tampa Bay. I'm going with historic Kenwood, and I'm going to explain this. But when you look at St. Petersburg, it's basically 100% more similar to the beginning of this video. They're all historic boroughs for the most part. No new construction master plan element when it comes to single family homes. It's all going to be city living. It's just different. It's a lot more eclectic, a lot more lifestyle first, work second, versus the same exact version in Tampa Bay would be more that work energy, city energy. Well, the thing about St. Pete is it's relatively simple because unlike Tampa, where you have 4 or 5 major districts that people live around Ybor City, you have downtown itself, you have South Tampa, you have the mall, all that West Chase. St. Pete has one. It's downtown St. Pete. It's lovely, but it's just one. And it sits on the old Tampa Bay side. It's the opposite of the beach. So the beach is a commitment. You're either on the beach or you're not, the barrier islands. Most people live northeast of downtown on the bay side. So I mentioned Beach Park in the beginning of this video where it hugs Old Tampa Bay. Well, St. Pete connects the other side. This is on the other side of the bay. Well, if you look up every list on the internet, best place to live in St. Pete, most of them exist slightly northeast of downtown St. Pete because it's like any city. It's how far are you from the cool thing and then which direction do you go? Well, the evolution of why I picked Kenwood is when this was all built, right? You're always going to have the first one that hits like historic Hyde Park did. The first one that's the most popular because it was by all the stuff originally that got cool. And in the St. Pete conversation, that's probably an area called Old Northeast because you have a street called Central Avenue in St. Pete, runs east to west, right through the heart of St. Pete. Well, you have the bay and the downtown. So of course, the area that got popular first was on the water and downtown. Well, the areas that sit right above that part of the central got popular first. They hug the water. Well, then you keeps going. It keeps evolving. People keep getting kicked further west. Well, it keeps going. Well, Central started getting really in vogue, kind of where the Tampa Bay Rays Stadium is. There wasn't a lot over there. There was not a lot over there. It was just as walkable, just as cool, but you had none of the stuff was built yet, right? And then you have Urban Brew and Barbecue come in there, a couple breweries. People start to get hype about that area. Well, historic Kenwood's set in an area where it kind of crept up, because it was the same place as Old Northeast, but it was on this part of Central where nothing was. I put it on my list because going into 2024, I think it's a good example of, I wouldn't say it's up and coming anymore, but it's a good example of the best mousetrap in the town and a junior version in where you could win. The median price is $550 versus Old Northeast, which is not the same. The median price in Kenwood probably 5 years ago was probably $180. And there's many, many areas that you could replicate if you keep looking down that path. 43 properties sold in the last 6 months. So you have some volume there. Historic bungalows, front porch living, carriage, rear garages. It's got the whole thing. This is an area about community. Everybody knows each other. Everybody likes to hang out. There's breweries. There's things to do, all that kind of thing. And it's a great way to experience the town. So I think historic Kenwood as my number 8 would be one example of what you could do in the St. Petersburg area. Okay, number 9 on the list, I think could be a cool option for you, is to go 1.5 miles above downtown St. Petersburg and go to an area called Crescent Lake. So you have Crescent Lake, you have Crescent Heights. But this is an area that has similar kind of housing, but it captures a lot more of the traditional neighborhood feel. It feels like the way the neighborhoods are bucketed around this lake, they feel a little bit more like their own private thing. It feels a little bit more suburban in a conversation where there's not many suburbs. Historic Kenwood and some of those other neighborhoods are gonna feel very city-driven. It's really in and out of these grid-shaped streets. So more spacious lots, you have a lot of mature landscaping and brick-lined streets. And it's an area that you drive through and you can kind of get romantic about. It's very, very lovely. And there's a couple different options within them for affordability or for more sprawling land or something like that. One of the cool things in addition to that, hence its namesake, it surrounds this huge, quite lovely 56-acre lake called Crescent Lake. Has a dog park. It's super walkable, a lot of green space for you, kids, animals, all that kind of thing. Walkable from all the neighborhoods. And then this one really feels like you're out of downtown, but then 1.5 miles down you're in. And the cool thing about St. Pete is it's also really easy to get to the top of St. Pete as well. So if you're up and down this 4th Street corridor of the interstate and you're shoot down to downtown St. Pete and up to the foot of the bridge over to Tampa in no time at all because of the shape of the town. But I think Crescent Lake is a really, really good option if you're shopping right now. It should be on the list. All right, and the 10th and final one on the list, still on the St. Petersburg side, we're going to go a little different, and I want to talk about shore acres. So this is where you're going to get your waterfront living. So this is on canals. We'll show a picture of the map here, but you can see the shape of forks, so how much waterfront abundance is available. But this is where you go if you've been shopping in Sarasota or Naples at all, and you see a lot of the Florida-style, traditional 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, like, stucco-based homes that aren't all bungalow, crawl space, historic charm. A lot of that sits here. This looks like Florida. You see the pictures, it looks like Florida. Palm trees, green space, wide lots, traditional style homes, but you're right on the canals, so you can be on a canal, you can be off a canal, but you're close to it. And you can get all of the cool part of St. Pete without having to do that true city living, which is like, for me personally, I like the suburban kind of homes. It doesn't have to be brand new construction, but I like a lot of the floor plans that were built post 1995, or at least renovated, updated to that. I like the taller ceilings. I like the wider rear patios because your pool can only go to the planes of the house. Your screen can only go to the planes of the house, so the width matters. And, obviously you're going to move to Florida. If you can be near a canal, even better. But I'm not someone that's romantic about restoring a 1950s bungalow or any of that kind of stuff. But I do love St. Pete. I have kind of a St. Pete personality. So if you're looking for that blend, I guess, in a brevity's sake for this video, if you're looking for that blend, I think Shore Acres is really interesting. Not only that fact, but last 6 months, 180 days, you had 123 properties that sold on MLS, and the median price was only $650K in perspective, right? But there's some areas that right around it, like Snell Isle, etc., that are far higher than that, live a similar lifestyle. So this could be an interesting one if you're looking for all the St. Pete has to offer, and you were under the impression that you had to do a old neighborhood. This could satiate that perfect blend and also be 15 minutes one way to downtown and 25 minutes one way to downtown Tampa as well. All right, my friends, that is a wrap for my list for 2024 in Tampa Bay. Again, my name is Adam Hancock, and this is the Florida Relocation Guide. It is your smartest way to navigate the Pinellas, Hillsborough, and Pasco County conversation. If you value this video at all, add any value at all, please consider subscribing to the channel. It's the best way to see the 1 to 2 videos we will post every single week. If you haven't downloaded the free guide, that is in the description below. I just trade you for an email address. Email address is somewhere where you could be attached to a newsletter that we send out as well that's different than anything on the channel. And finally, of course, the low-hanging fruit, and nothing replaces a conversation. So if you're looking at buying, selling, and/or investing in the entire state of Florida, we have an unbelievable, unique organization. You get me, you get the broker, and you get an individual agent that has a low volume of clients and is really matched to you. If you're relocating a family, we're going to try to put you with someone that already did what you're trying to do. Schools are important, work's important, and you need someone that knows it well. So please consider reaching out. We have a lot of ways to do so. Most importantly, thank you so much for watching today's video. We'll see you on the next one.